Alright, welcome back to another Art of War 3 replay. I'm your host, John Cena, and today we're going to be doing a clan 2v2 battle. I'm going to be the green player, and my ally EveRommel C is going to be the blue player. We're going to be facing off against two resistance player medalists. Let's go and get into it. We already got some early action happening, some early game aggression coming on from the yellow player, who's got 2 medals. This is not looking good on my part. I'm trying to produce units to defend my base here, but my fortresses are severely underpowered. They don't quite have the upgrades they need, and they're not able to finish off these units, and my barracks are just getting destroyed. I've lost 2 barracks already. EveRommel C is trying to reinforce with a couple assaults there. I've got another fortress out. This is not looking good. More coyotes and infantry are pouring in from the yellow player, just putting some early game pressure on me. Meanwhile, EveRommel C is trying to produce units there. Looks like he's got a couple fortresses and heavy assaults. These riflemen and coyotes are now firing onto my supply center. I'm trying to build a avia factory so I can get a cyclone out for scouting and for defense. Looks like these infantry and vehicles from the yellow player are continuing to dish out damage. Meanwhile, EveRommel is continuing to produce units for early game control, and this is not looking good. I've just lost the supply center, and so that's already 500 resources of structures gone, plus a couple fortresses already. Looks like there's Kane's out from the yellow player as well, so yellow's already going to steal those naval containers as well for base development. Good news though for me is I've been able to clean up the assault from the yellow player initially. Looks like EveRommel launching an early attack here to scout, and red is very prepared with 4 sniper towers lined up. I'm teching up to HQ3. Let's go ahead and check out the yellow player. Let's see what they've got. We finally have some intel on what yellow's up to, and surprisingly, yellow's only got 3 supply centers and is teching up to HQ3. So I'm actually ahead in terms of the economy at this point, which would make sense considering that yellow has poured a ton of resources into the early game aggression. We can see that now I'm trying to build away from the water there. I just finished up upgrading to HQ3 there. I'm gonna lose the avia factory, but at this point I don't care about the avia factory. Looks like EveRommel's fighting for some early game control here, taking out some riflemen. Meanwhile, I'm going for an HQ3 army build, and I'm starting to produce some hammers. Here comes some hawks though from the red player. This is not looking good for either of us. Neither of us have any sort of anti-air to counter. And the fact that red's already got 2 hawks out is not looking good for either of us. My fortresses and the hammer tank are trying to take care of those Kanes. EveRommel's got absolutely no response whatsoever to take out those hawks. Again, I'm continuing to just produce units on my side for defense, trying to upgrade a barracks there to potentially get some heavy assaults and fire assaults out. These hawks, meanwhile, looks like are retreating back to their base to refuel. EveRommel's trying to capture that resource container. These Kane are continuing to try and harass me, which is very annoying. Here comes a cyclone from EveRommel. It's going to get a scout onto red. Let's see what red's up to. Looks like red, as we suspected, is already HQ3. They've got 3 hawks out and a level 3 assault vehicle factory and a special vehicle factory out. So we anticipate some jaguars, porcupines possibly. It looks like that factory is being upgraded, so we might see some mammoths coming out. And red's got 7 supply centers, it looks like. So red is fully developed. Meanwhile, I've got my infrastructure out now, and I'm just starting to produce vehicles and infantry to defend. Again, I'm building away from the water here just to get away from those Kanes. EveRommel tells me that he thinks that he's done for. He's trying to desperately build anti-air, but these hawks are making it very difficult for EveRommel to produce a meaningful counter of any kind. So my plan here is actually to amass a ground army as fast as possible, put some pressure on yellow, and draw out the hawks from red so that EveRommel can try to get some space to breathe. So I tell EveRommel, try and get some typhoons out if we can. These hawks though are dishing out damage against the assault vehicle factory. EveRommel desperately trying to produce anything to counter these hawks. Hawks are dishing out damage on that assault vehicle factory. Looks like the hawks are trying to swing around the side there. One of the hawks is going to go down. Assault vehicle factory is going to go down there. Meanwhile, my ground troops now moving on to some higher ground to put some pressure onto yellow. I've got a handful of hammer tanks and some typhoons there. So it looks like there's grenadiers and dragonflies from the yellow player, which is a pretty classic build. Here comes a Hawk from the yellow player, so we know Hawks are coming into play from the yellow side as well. Luckily, I've got my Typhoons, though, to dish out anti-air damage. I need to deploy all of my Typhoons, though. Only a couple of them are deployed so far. Red's coming in with the Hawks to provide additional fire. And here comes some Jaguar tanks from the red player. I am not prepared to fight an offensive yet full on against these Jaguar tanks. I need to retreat. And I'm going to take some heavy casualties here. These Typhoons are desperately trying to escape, but they are not going to make it. Those Jaguar tanks are going to clean up my Typhoons. So I need to rebuild my Typhoons. In the meantime, EveRommel is trying to produce more units now. He's got a couple anti-air towers out, which is good news. I'm going for a double special vehicle factory build. I'm going to go for a double Typhoon production, seeing that there's Dragonflies and Hawks in play here. I don't think there's going to be Dragonfly full-on spam, but we'll see. Here comes Red moving in some Jaguars, Mammoths, a Porcupine, and infantry onto EveRommel. EveRommel's got fortresses and heavy assaults to combat. The fortress is hard to try and tank damage, but those Jaguars are dishing out so much damage. Here comes the Hawks. They're going to take out a Typhoon, and EveRommel's in trouble. He's only got a handful of heavy assaults left. This is not looking good. He is dishing out some damage against those Jaguar tanks, but it's not going to be enough. Meanwhile, those Mammoths are dishing out artillery, long-range damage on the Typhoon, and those Hawks are going to finish off the Typhoon. So meanwhile, I'm pushing a ground army once again onto the yellow player. Yellow's coming in with the Hawks. Let's see how this pans out. I've got my Typhoons deployed. We'll get a couple so far, but Yellow's not yet fully committing. Looks like Hawks are coming back in again for another attack. I got 3 Typhoons in the area. These Hawks are taking some pretty heavy damage. Looks like I'm able to shoot down a Hawk, which is good news for me. And the Hawks are taking even more damage. They're clumping up, which is very nice for me. Another Hawk goes down. And these Hawks are finished off by my Typhoons. Very nice. I tell EveRommel I'm going to try and reinforce them now. We see there's a Chameleon in the mix, so we can confirm that Red is already HQ4. So Red has the tech advantage on us. And it looks like Red's actually retreating, so I'm going to move my units back towards point D. EveRommel's making a push onto the container now, trying to see if he can capture it. He's got a couple units in the area, some infantry, fortresses, and a Typhoon, as well as a Cyclone, which is going to reveal the fog units. There's a ton of Jaguars in the mix, though, for the red player, and I don't think this is going to be enough troops to push through. We can see there's Hawks coming in now to support for the red player, and EveRommel's heavy assaults are just getting slaughtered by those Jaguar tanks. So it's not looking good for EveRommel on the front, but EveRommel is continuing to put up a fight, trying to keep pressure on the red player. So I'm getting a scout now onto the yellow player. Let's see what yellow's got. So we see that yellow is HQ3. They've got Jaguar tanks out. We see that level 3 assault vehicle factory. We see double Evia factory. So possible spam coming in? Maybe. We're not sure yet. But there's no defenses on that side of the base. So I'm going to go ahead and push my entire ground army towards the left side of yellow's base. I've got fire assaults, heavy assaults, hammers, and Typhoons. Here come the Hawks from the red player trying to support. My hammer tanks are now pushing onto the yellow player's base. And we can see yellow is teching up to HQ4. And this is actually perfect timing for my assault because yellow has spent 1,300 resources on upgrading that could otherwise have been used for defensive structures or units. And now I've got a pretty big ground army on the inside of yellow's base here. I'm trying to finish off the airfield so I can get rid of the airfield there. There we go. Now yellow's not going to have any Hawks to use for fighting my army here. But red's still got those Hawks dishing out damage. I got to bring my Typhoons in. Now my Typhoons are in position and deployed, and they're dishing out tons of anti-air damage against those Hawks. Those Hawks are getting shot down, which is very helpful for my assault here. I've only got 50 command points worth of units though left, and yellow is putting up a good fight here, trying to push my units out of the base here. As you can see, one of the big mistakes I made in this fight here was I let my resources climb up way too high. You can see I've got almost 2,000 resources. What I should have done was continue to produce units constantly. EveRommel here trying to make a push here with those heavy assaults against the Jaguars here. And EveRommel is making some progress here, but he's also taking some heavy casualties here. Looks like the Hawks are coming in to dish out damage against the heavy assaults, and those heavy assaults are getting slaughtered by the combination of jets and tanks. So now we can see, if you look at my boosts, I've got a gold production boost going, and this is because I realized my previous error of having too many resources sitting idly. So now I'm trying to just pump in units as fast as possible, and now I've got a gold attack boost going. I'm trying to take out structures, push my offensive. Here comes the red player coming in with Jaguars and infantry, and we can see that my resources are steadily dwindling down towards the low end as I continue to mass produce units as quickly as possible. Red's now trying to press an assault onto the base of EveRommel, but EveRommel's got a nice defensive line set up. Hawks coming in now from the red player, trying to dish out some damage against my tanks here. Looks like they flew in from the side to try and minimize contact with the Typhoons, but my Typhoons are spread out very nicely here. And it looks like my Typhoons are dishing out some good damage, and the Hammers are dishing out good damage against the base as well. Looks like Yellow is under some heavy pressure here. Yellow's desperately trying to defend my assault here. Now for me, I'm trying to be very careful in how I move my units. I don't want to rush into the base too soon. I'm trying to make sure I have a good ground army before I launch each of my assaults. So I'm going in, dishing out some damage, and then moving back out. And it's working out so far right now. Yellow's only down to a couple Grenadiers there. And it looks like they've got the triple barracks and a couple Jaguar tanks there. So I've got the number superiority, and I'm going to throw on a gold attack boost just to optimize my assault here. I'm going to take out a barracks there, which is going to be nice. I'm going to see if I can take out another barracks here. Again, I'm doing the hit and run here with the Hammers. Hawks are coming in from the red player once again trying to support, but again, my Typhoons are dishing out some steady damage against these Hawks, and it's not looking good. One of the Hawks is going to go down. Looks like I've cleaned up another barracks, so Yellow's only down to one barracks. Yellow's got 4 Jaguar tanks in the area, now down to 2 Jaguar tanks. My Hammer tanks are just dishing out tons of damage against these Jaguar tanks, and these Grenadiers are getting shredded by my ground army, and Yellow's in big trouble. EveRommel, meantime, is putting some pressure onto the red player. Red's got a JCP army defending their base, and because of the pressure from EveRommel, Red's not able to send their forces yet to reinforce their ally. So now I'm dishing out damage against this assault vehicle factory. Looks like there's a Jaguar tank out from that level 3 factory. The level 3 factory is going to go down though. Meanwhile, EveRommel continuing to pressure Red. I tell EveRommel, keep that pressure on Red. For my end of things, I think I've got the momentum to take out Yellow, but I need to sustain this momentum. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble if this attack fails. Dragonflies are starting to come out from the Yellow player. Yellow desperately trying to spam those Dragonflies to defend. I've got to move my Typhoons a little bit closer and bring in some heavy assaults, and that's going to let me take care of those Dragonflies no problem. My Hammer tanks now dishing out damage against that construction yard. Construction yard is going to go down. Meanwhile, my Typhoons continuing to just dish tons of damage against helicopters, and now my tanks are moving in once again. Yellow still trying to defend the base as best as they can, but this is not looking good for the Yellow player at all. And looks like that Dragonfly is going to get shredded by my Typhoons again. Again, not looking good for Yellow. Looks like there's more Dragonflies coming in, more infantry coming in from the Yellow player. Yellow's got 3 barracks down and a couple sniper towers in the area. My Hammer tanks are now concentrating their fire onto that headquarters. Meanwhile, EveRommel is moving a ground army onto the top area there to secure the resource container. Here comes the red player now with their JCP army. Red's now desperately trying to keep their ally in the fight, otherwise it's going to be a 2v1 in this arena. And it is not going to be enough though. Yellow has no units left to defend with. I've taken out the headquarters, and now I'm just continuing to clean up the rest of Yellow's base here, slowly but surely. My Hammer tanks are going to move into that fog there. I've got enough infantry and hammers mixed together that I'm not concerned about the fog. I am taking some good damage here. Meanwhile, EveRommel is going to push an assault onto the red player's base. We can see there's a couple Zeus tanks and Hammer tanks there. Meanwhile, I'm just continuing to clean up the yellow player's base. I've got some infantry in the mix there as well to support. These tanks here are getting cleaned up by riflemen from the red player, but the important thing is that EveRommel's keeping pressure on red again so that red can't send a full army to support yellow. So in this case here now, I've launched another assault into the JCP fog, and this time it is no problem at all. That chameleon army gets shredded. I'm going to go ahead and clean up this mammoth artillery here, and that's going to be the end of red's rescue force. So yellow now has no way of getting back into the game. They've only got a handful of structures left here, a couple supply centers, power plant, and a naval shipyard. But this is all going to be useless. I'm going to go ahead and just clean up the rest of it here. And now both EveRommel and I have the upper hand in this battle. So I tell EveRommel to build a full ground army for max command points. Once he's got max command points and once I'm in position, we're going to go ahead and make one final coordinated push onto the red player's base. So I'm going to go ahead and send a scout now with a hammer tank. I just want to see where red's army is in position. We can see, here we go, there's a chameleon army here with some Jaguar tanks, infantry, and a porcupine. And now I'm going to go ahead and move my ground troops in. I'm going to take care of this JCP army, and I tell EveRommel to charge. EveRommel is going to go ahead and send a handful of hammer tanks into that fog to support my army, and my army is well prepared to take on this JCP group here. It's going to be no problem at all. That army gets shredded. Meanwhile, EveRommel is moving the bulk of his army through the main entrance and shredding those sniper towers into fences. And this is pretty much good game at this point. EveRommel and I are moving full ground armies onto red, and red has absolutely no response whatsoever. They're in production with a Jaguar tank, but it's not going to be enough. So pretty much around this point in the game, the red player surrendered, and it was pretty much a good game. So hopefully you all enjoyed this epic 2v2 battle. We were able to make a nice comeback and defeat 2 medalists. We will see you in the next one. Good luck with your battles.